Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready, dog. Get ready.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. I'm Rick Longnecker, your host. I always like to begin with a silly networking story. A few weeks ago, my wife's aunt, Charlotte Costanzo, mentioned that she had just finished watching an episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. She said, "You should interview my brother-in-law. He's achieved great success and he's a proud University of Toledo graduate." And that's where today's Rocket Networker guest comes in, Dr. Jim Strong. For 14 years, Jim served as the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at California State University, Stanislaus. For the past 8 years, Jim has served as a professor of marketing there. Jim, thanks for making time in your busy schedule to join us on the Rocket Networker podcast. Welcome.
My pleasure, Rick. Proud alumni, absolutely. The UT MBA was instrumental for me in whatever success I've had. So I have a lot of fond feelings about the University of Toledo, and so I'm glad to be here.
Well, that's great. You know what? There's a lot of fun stories we'll get into, and some of that will include your time at Toledo. So now you're in California now. So whereabouts
I'm
in California?
in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey, Rick.
Oh, you're in Jersey now. So
Yeah,
now,
I lived in California for 18 years, something like that.
Okay.
Started out in Southern California, working for California State University, Dominguez Hills, as the Dean of Business and Public Policy. And then I went to Turlock, which is in the Central Valley near Modesto, served as Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs for 6.5 years, then went back to the faculty. And then my first wife passed away in 2016. And in 2022, I got remarried and moved to New Jersey to a gal who we were in she was in an MBA program. I was in the PhD at Drexel University. So
okay.
That's how it went. So I'm in South Jersey, not too far from Atlantic City, in a place called Egg Harbor Township.
I didn't realize you moved back. I knew you were teaching out in California. I didn't realize you'd
I'm
gone
still
back.
teaching. I'm still teaching. I
Yeah.
teach full time. I'm still a full time faculty, but I do everything synchronous, online, via Zoom. Since I moved out here in 22, and even before that, the pandemic forced that to happen, and I've been teaching online ever since, and now I'm doing it from New Jersey.
That's awesome. Well, my wife and I lived there for 24 years. You're down in the South Jersey in a beautiful area on the shore. We were in a really cool town, Maplewood, New Jersey, up in the north, a few miles from New York City. So we love the Jersey Shore. Aren't you from there originally? Is that your hometown?
I lived in Beach Haven, New Jersey from 85 to 89. My mother had a summer home there, and I was in the PhD program at Drexel in Philly going back and forth. Then I started teaching for what it was Glassboro State University at the time. Now they're Rowan University. And so during that period, I lived in Beach Haven. I grew up on Long Island until I was 10, and then West Hartford, Connecticut, from 10 until I went away to college. And I went to college in Lafayette College in Easton, PA, which is in northeastern Pennsylvania, right over the Delaware River from New Jersey. So
yeah, that's neat.
I'm very familiar with the area. Yeah.
I appreciate the time today, as I know you're getting ready for the classes to begin here soon. So let me give you a little backdrop before we go further into the podcast. So the concept of the Rocket Networker podcast is we like to interview folks that have some connection to Toledo or the University of Toledo. And what we do is we like to model a concept called the threads of connectivity. Those are the little things like our hometown, our college, our high school, the things that we're active in volunteerism, the places we've lived and worked during our lifetime. You know, those little things, Jim, that connect us at a personal level and build trust. So that's kind of the flow of the podcast. So you've already kind of started down that path, but let's back up a little bit. and go back into hometown for just a second. So your initial childhood years were out on Long Island. Is that what you said?
Right. Rockville Center, which is in Nassau County. That's where, up until I was 10 years old, I lived there, and then moved to West Hartford, Connecticut.
Where did you go to high school then?
I went to Conard High School in West Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
Graduated in 1971, which was a long time ago.
That was a couple of years ago, Jim.
Yeah, just a few.
It's a couple of years ago. When you were in high school, what types of activities were you involved with? Were you involved in sports or glee club?
Yeah, I played a lot of sports.
Did you?
Played football and baseball and played a little bit of basketball, but I played a lot of sports.
So what was your favorite sport then? We got to go there. It sounds like you're an athlete. So which was your favorite?
Well, baseball probably. Football was too darn hard. Football, you got to be a man to play football, let me tell you. There's a lot of pain involved in football. I was a catcher in baseball, so there's a little bit of pain in that job too, but not like football.
Right, exactly.
I don't know how these guys do it. I don't think it's so good for your health.
So when you were in high school and you were getting into your kind of junior, senior year, you're playing sports, what were you thinking about for life after high school? Were you thinking college, the military, skilled trades?
Well, I was college for sure. I went to a really good high school. We had a class of 667 students in my senior class. 40 went to the Ivy League.
Wow.
And so a lot of good schools and very, very competitive high school. Really, really good students and good faculty. And so I knew I was going to go to college. I didn't know exactly what I would major in. I liked to read and write, and so maybe I was thinking about a career, in writing. In high school and in college, maybe I thought about that a little bit, but I never really pursued that. So I guess it wasn't as big a passion as I thought it would be, and didn't really know what I was going to do coming out of college. I actually went to work painting. I painted for a contractor when I was at Lafayette all during those years, and lived there during the summer. We had an apartment and so forth, and so we weren't not as focused. I wish I would have been more focused, and that's what I tell my students now. I wish I would have majored in economics, although an English major actually ended up serving me really well. But anyway, so, I ended up doing that. And then after doing that for about 6 months, I said, whoa, I don't want to be a painter. This is not the way to go. And both my parents were in sales, and I'd heard sales war stories my whole life. And I said, I could do that. And that's better than painting houses. I actually ran my own painting business in Beach Haven in the summer of 1975 with a buddy of mine, Danny Kilmurray, who ended up becoming a very successful stockbroker, still is. And so anyway, I got a sales job. I actually went to work for Bloomingdale's.
Okay.
And did not like working for Bloomingdale's. Lived in New York on the Upper East Side, in a walk-up apartment that was $200 a month, rent control. Can you believe that?
Wow.
1976 February.
Wow.
And I had applied to Armstrong World Industries, and they called me up and said, "Hey, we're 3 students short of our class. You interested in being a marketing rep for us?" And I'm like, oh, thank you. And I was on the next thing, smoking down to Lancaster, and was very enthusiastic about getting that job, and have been through a lot of interviews trying to get other sales jobs. So I was a lot more prepared than my competition. And they gave me the job, and they ended up sending me to Toledo as what they called a resident marketing rep. And I was calling on a company called Ohio Plate Glass Company, who was an Armstrong resilient flooring distributor, and they were also a big carpet distributor. And that's how I ended up in Toledo. and because I was an English major, as I got into sales and working for Armstrong, I thought, you know what, I need a better background in business and marketing. So I went to the University of Toledo. There was a guy named Dale Sullivan. I don't know if you know who that guy was,
Yes.
but he kind of took a chance on me because my GMAT score in math I was a little rusty when I took the test. I think it was not through the roof or anything. And he said, "Well, you're working for McGranahan's," and that was a distributor that took over for Ohio Plate Glass. And I like the fact that you're working and you're in sales, and I'm going to let you in the program. And I had to take all the prereq courses. I took like 20 courses. It took me
Wow.
4 years to get through it, and but I loved it. And then the faculty was great, and then I ended up eventually I ended up getting a PhD at Drexel University in Philadelphia, and my MBA at the University of Toledo was great preparation.
So take me back a little bit to college. You said you went to Lafayette. So you were in Connecticut, but you picked Lafayette, which is right on the New Jersey border with Pennsylvania. Why Lafayette?
Well, I did a lot of caddying when I was a kid, making money. My brother got me into it, and there was a guy, Ralph Hackett, who I caddied for a lot, and he went to Lafayette, and he was telling me how good Lafayette. And Lafayette's a good school, real good school. It's even better now than when I went in terms of the rankings and how hard it is to get in there and that sort of thing. And so he recommended Lafayette. I had applied to Georgetown, and Georgetown was my first choice, but Georgetown put me on a waiting list, and that kind of irritated me. So I said, well, if you don't want me, I'll go to Lafayette, and Lafayette was a good choice. Lafayette, I had a good circle of friends there, and I still, Danny Kilmurray was one of those friends, and my he runs a party every July 4th, and a lot of the friends from Lafayette get together there, and so yeah, it was a good experience, and then that's kind of how the college thing went.
Right. So when you were at Lafayette, did you get involved in student organizations there, or were you just kind of working that painting job?
No, I wasn't that involved in student organizations. I was in a fraternity for a while. Mostly, I was, going to school, and yeah, we worked. I did a lot of painting, contracting work on the side, trying to pay the bills and so forth.
Right.
And played a little baseball. Wish I would have stuck with baseball, but got sidetracked and didn't do that.
Right.
And then went on, and it was a good time for growing up and maturing and being on your own, and obviously it all panned out. I think, to tell you the truth, I think, in terms of a business career and me getting into higher ed and being an administrator, I think the MBA from Toledo was the preparation that served me very well, as well as the PhD from Drexel um, was really good preparation.
When you moved from the East Coast to Toledo, Ohio, what was that like?
Well, first of all, you could go out to a city and nobody. A little bit challenging. My stepdaughter's just kind of gone through that. She's took a sales job and she's in a training program in North Carolina, and she went down there, didn't know anybody, and I talked to her about what that's like, and but I didn't see a huge difference between Toledo and the East Coast, to be honest with you. People are people. I mean, it's maybe a little bit slower, and it's East Coast people could be a little harder edge, maybe a little sarcastic sometimes, a little bit, little more assertive, and not so much Midwestern nice, but yeah, not really that much of a difference. And actually, I like Toledo, and I like the Midwestern vibe. So I had no problem. I met my first wife there, and she had a big family, and so you know we got married and then had some kids and settled into New Jersey or into Toledo. And I always liked Toledo, and I almost came back. I was a finalist for the dean job in 2018 for the University of Toledo. I had actually applied for a dean's job there in the early aughts. I forget the guy's name. He was an Indian guy,
Okay.
president at the time.
Oh, okay. Might have
And
been Naganathan.
nah, that wasn't
Was it
it. I
Nagi?
forget his name, but he told me he was going to hire me. And this is like 2002, something like that. And I
Okay.
remember driving home, pulling the driveway, and my wife walks. He had said, "I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to send an offer on Monday." She walks out the side door as I pull in the driveway. She's not. She says, "You're not going to believe this. The president of the University of Toledo just resigned." Four
Oh my
months
goodness.
later, I got a letter saying, "Thank you for applying, but
Thanks, but no thanks.
thanks, but no thanks." And
Like,
then again in
now, so
2018, I was a finalist. I thought I was going to come back, and I was thrilled, but that didn't work out.
okay.
So
Well,
I've
life
always
takes its
I've always
paths.
loved the University of Toledo.
So how long were you actually in Toledo?
Yeah, 8 or 9 years.
Got
I
it. Now,
was
when
in
you
Toledo from 76 to 85.
okay,
I
all right.
was in Toledo from fall of 76 until August of 85 when I moved to New Jersey and started the PhD program at Drexel University.
So that's when. So you left here. At that point, you had family. You're married, had kids at
Yeah,
that.
I'm married and two kids. I started a PhD program married with two kids, which was kind of a leap of faith, not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, that's
Thank
for
God I
sure.
had a great wife who was very supportive and because we sold our house. I mean, it was the sun and the moon and the stars all lined up. I mean,
Right.
my brother was painting the house of the dean of the Villanova Business School. I had applied to Drexel University. So this is a don't give up story, right?
Okay. All right.
So he's painting the house of the dean. I had been rejected from the PhD program at Drexel.
Okay.
And 6 months, 4 months earlier. So this is, I don't know when it was, sometime before August of 85. So he's painting this guy's house, big Irishman, talking about, all the people, all the deans he knows in Philadelphia and so on and so forth. And so my brother says, "Well, can you help my brother get in the PhD program at Drexel?" "Oh, I know Dean Dasher. He's a great guy. He's a good friend of mine. But first, I got to meet your brother. I'm not going to recommend him if I haven't met him." So I had to fly to New Jersey and meet Alvin Clay, dean of the Villanova Business School, and he liked me, so he recommends me. And long story short, Dean Dasher calls me. I go see Ralph Anderson, the department chair. He likes me and says, "I want you in the program." And he calls down to the head of the graduate program, say, "I want Strong in, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "Well, this is like 3 weeks before the start of the quarter." I said, "Well, you want me to start in December, right? Or January, the winter quarter, right?" He says, "No, I want you to start in 3 weeks. Can you get out here?" I
Nice.
said, I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
Because I
Nice to be
really
wanted.
wanted to do it. So
Mhm.
then kind of a humble part of this story. So it all works out. I have a good career. I end up being provost, which is a pretty high. It's second to being a president. So anyway, I'm at a conference, and Paul Dasher, the dean of the Drexel Business School, is giving a talk, and I had, I was gonna, and I went up to him afterwards, and I said, "I don't know if you remember me or not, but you took a chance on me and let me in the program at the PhD program. Things worked out. I'm a dean now, and I, blah, blah, blah." The guy goes, "Oh, okay, yeah, fine." Man, he couldn't get away from me fast enough. Oh man, it was like usually when a student comes and tells you they've been successful, you feel really good about it. This guy, I don't know if he had to go to the bathroom or something or what his problem was, but man, he could care less.
He's Yeah.
And then about a few years, sometime in probably around 2016, I had to call him on a reference check, and for a dean of his that was applying for a deanship at Stan State. And I chatted him up, and of course he didn't remember any of that stuff. But anyway, it's a small world, and sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, and you take advantage of it. And sometimes you get surprised, and it could be a little bit humorously humbling.
Yeah, exactly. Life takes its twists and turns for sure. When you finished at Drexel, then, right? You're raising the kids, going to school.
Right.
Where does life take you from Drexel then?
Oh,
Where do you go?
I took a job with the University of Akron in Akron, Ohio.
Okay, so you
My
came back
wife wanted to go back and get closer to her family in Toledo. And
Okay.
she had a brother, Scott, who lived in North Canton. And so, Akron had a really good sales program. There was a guy there named John Hawes. I don't know if you know who he is or not, but he was really excellent faculty in sales, and they started the Fisher Institute for Professional Selling. And so I went to work for the University of Akron. I was there for 14 years.
Okay.
And, lived in Canton, Ohio. And so that was a great experience. And there I became associate dean. I went from being associate professor to associate dean, which is unheard of. I mean, again, right place, right time. The guy who was supposed to get the job got himself in some trouble with a student. Provost calls down to the dean and says, "What is wrong with so-and-so? What kind of people you got working for you?" And next thing you know, and the other candidates had such obvious weaknesses that the dean picked this young guy who was still just an associate professor to be the associate dean of a school with 75 faculty, 3,000 students. So it was a pretty big opportunity. And people were like, "Strong got the job? Strong? What?" So then I got a dean's job in LA at CSU Dominguez Hills. And then this crazy guy, Ham Shermani, calls up one day and looking for a dean. The next thing you know, I'm working for him. And, he calls me on a Wednesday and offers me the job and I'm there like 3 weeks later. I'm on campus living in student housing. He was a can-do kind of guy.
So you basically went from Drexel in Philly to Akron for 14 years, and then you went out to California.
Right. And people in Ohio were like, "California? You're moving to California?" Like it was the dark side of the moon or something. And my first wife, Jane, was not thrilled.
She was not happy with that, huh?
She was not.
Now, how old were your kids when you moved to California for that first time to California? How old were the kids?
Oh, my oldest daughter was in her 20s. My son, was just graduating from high school.
Okay.
And my youngest daughter was just graduating from 7th grade. She was going into 8th grade.
Gotcha.
And
did your oldest go with you? Or was your oldest in college or something at that time?
Yeah, she came with us. And my youngest, I think if my youngest had really objected to it, I think it would have been difficult. I think my wife might have been able to convince me not to go. And going and taking that job was really the right move, big time. I mean, really, really helped me in terms of my experience in academic administration, as well as financially and in the pension system in California. I mean, it was just tremendously beneficial looking back in hindsight. But, she didn't want to leave her family in Toledo. And I think if my youngest daughter was like, I'm tired. She had always lived in Canton, Ohio her entire life. Let's go. And I think that was really important.
That's neat.
So it's funny how things turn like that on little things. Now, maybe we still would have gone if she was complaining, but it would have been a whole lot harder because my wife had a hard time adjusting to it. It took Took her a number of years to get used to living in California. Then once she got used to it, she loved it. We'd
Yeah.
come back from Toledo and she'd be like, oh,
Thank
thank
God.
God, thank God.
Yeah.
I think, students, a lot of our students, first generation college students, they don't want to leave the area. They don't want to leave their family. But the opportunity does not necessarily work out that way. I mean, I think you have to be willing to move
True.
and take that. When that opportunity presents itself,
Take it.
take it. Because you don't know when it's going to happen again, and you can
Right.
adjust, and you can, and but that's that's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. It's easy
Uh,
to say it now, having lived through,
yeah,
7
yeah,
moves or 8 moves.
yeah.
But when you're in the moment, when you're living in the middle of that, it's difficult. And there's dark days. You know how it is.
Oh yeah,
You get out there, you
moving's
don't know where the
hard.
bank, yeah, you don't know where the bank's at, you don't know where the grocery
Oh
store's
man,
at, you're
it's hard. And
lost.
listen, just moving here from California a couple of years ago to my second wife's home was a little harder than I
Yeah,
thought it would be.
right, right,
Sometimes it's good not to know everything about the future, right? You just deal
right.
with it.
So you're teaching marketing now, which sounds like you kind of come full circle back to your love of marketing and sales. Talk about that.
We got a new president in 2016 at Stan State, and she came in and made it pretty clear. Said, I want you to step down in 6 months or whatever. And I was like, I'm not ready to retire. So I went back to the faculty. I tried very hard to find another administrative job, but that was a challenge. I mean, I was a finalist 4 times, semifinalist 25 times, applied
Mhm.
to about 80 jobs. At the time, I think I was 63 years old or so, and I couldn't find anything. And
Mhm.
so, I was back teaching because, I still wanted to be productive. And and it's worked out. Actually, think maybe it's better it worked out like this, because if I had taken another administrative job, maybe I wouldn't have met my second wife. Maybe I wouldn't have moved to New Jersey. I'm able to teach online from New Jersey back to Stan State. I got a good department that is very supportive. They were welcomed me back when I was provost, which is not always the case. So, it's all worked out. It's all worked out really well, and I have a lot to offer students in terms of experience and knowledge. Obviously learning how to teach online and getting up with the technology has been a challenge and a lot of work, but I'm
Mhm.
fine with that. So I'm happy to be able to still contribute. I don't want to retire. I
It's
don't like
funny.
these.
I'm with you.
My
I'm with
wife
you.
is like, you should think about maybe retiring. Although she was the one that said I was going to retire when I first got here, and she said, "Why didn't you ask them if you could teach full time?" I think she was worried that I wasn't going to have anything enough to do. So I mean,
That's
she had a different career. She's been, I don't know, 35 years at the same school.
okay.
So she knows everybody, and and so when you move around a lot, that doesn't happen, but you have other experiences that are rewarding. So there's no perfect path. That's right. That's
So
right.
let me ask you this: as our as we move to wrap up our conversation today. First off, it's been fun. It's been a good dialogue. I love hearing about your background and just the fact that you've been from the East Coast to the Middle to the West Coast. You've been all over the United States. It's very cool. If you could go back in time and go back and talk to high school students in their freshman year, right? They're just getting into school. What advice would you give them about their high school years?
Get as much out of your academic work as you possibly can. Don't, kind of don't be overly concerned about getting, the perfect grades and all that, but also take it seriously and learn as much as you can.
Hmm.
And things are going to work out. If you work hard and you're thinking and you're good, your moral compass is correct, and you don't get sidetracked in some counterproductive behavior that's going to hurt you, you're going to be fine.
Right.
You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And then, stay busy. And,
Right.
if you like playing sports, then play sports. If you like doing acting and theater, then do that. If you like clubs and activities, then do that. But, I would get off of social media and, stop with things that are non-productive and not helping you. And
Right.
then, I would also say, develop your leadership skills and your interpersonal skills.
Right.
And I think caddying when I was a kid and interacting with those, they're mostly all executives and whatnot. I think that was a great experience for me.
Right.
And there's been authors that have talked about how young people are not getting that now like they used to back in the day.
Right.
And I don't know how accurate that is, but I think it probably is. Get out and do something. I mean,
Right.
don't be sitting in front of a screen playing video. I got students that don't even want to talk in my online Zoom classes. I execute the class through Zoom, and I have to I say, hey, Bob, what do you think? And then
Right.
Bob will say something. And then I asked a student offline one time, I said, why is students so hesitant to talk? And this happened face to face, but it seems worse. And they'll go in the chat box and they'll type an answer, but they won't get on there and speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the student, and they said, well, people don't like to talk in class and they don't like to speak in class, and they'd rather just type in the chat box. Well, I got news for you. In life, you need to talk to people.
Right.
You need to connect with people. And, so I would, to a freshman in high school, I would say, do that. And try to find some way that you can connect with adults who are good role models.
Mm-hmm.
If that's feasible. That may not always be feasible. And let's stay positive. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal about how, people perceive current times as, that folks are being meaner and more uncivil to each other than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And these two academic faculty did research on it, and they say, not true. And went back, I forget all the measures they used, but their conclusion was, it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
That we have a negativity bias and we're overreacting. And because if you ask them, well, how do you get along with your neighbor or somebody, in your immediate, and most people, oh, good, fine. Everybody, it's good. It's like your congressman. Everybody in Congress is no good. How about your congressman? Oh, my congressman's great.
Right.
So, watch out for that. Don't get caught up in the current, gloom and doom that, everything is bad, because that kind of nonsense has been going on ever since the existence of mankind. So, don't let that stop you from going out and doing something.
Right.
Because one good thing leads to another.
That is just great advice. All of those things, all the points you made are just spot on. And I think that advice fits not only for high school students, I think it fits for college students. And quite frankly, I think your advice fits for all of us. So that's good stuff.
It wasn't anything I made up. I'm just reciting good thoughts that I've been exposed to over my career.
That's great. Well, Jim, I tell you what, I could continue this conversation with you all day. Your experiences, we didn't even touch the tip of the iceberg of all that you've seen and done all across the United States and through your professional career. So, I just want to say thanks. I appreciate you making time. I know you've got a busy schedule right now. So thank you for sharing your journey with the Rocket Networker podcast audience. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Rick. And you do a great job. And promoting the University of Toledo is a wonderful endeavor on your part. And you should be commended for that, because it's a great school. And the business school is a great business school, and my MBA was tremendously beneficial. And so I have tremendous amount of gratitude for the University of Toledo.
Wow, well said. And I feel the same passion for the university and what my undergraduate and my master's degree did for me too. And it's good to give back to our alma mater.
Yes,
It
it
really
is.
is.
All
So,
right.
and that's it for this
Okay.
episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. Now it's time to launch connections to ignite your success. And the key question is, are you ready? Are you ready to launch connections to ignite your team's success? Then let's schedule a keynote speech at your next meeting or conference, or a training workshop, or let's do some coaching. Go to rocketnetworker.com and click on the link. It's time to launch connections to ignite your success. Are you ready?